Hi, I'm Skylar, and today I'm talking to Arina, who is a public affairs manager at Woodland Trust. So, Arina, when did you first know you were interested in the environmental sector?
Um, Ever since I was kind of very young, very little, always been into nature. Started with making mud pies, as it starts for most for most people, and then for kind of going to university or trying to make that choice, that's kind of where it all got cemented for me. And with my brother saying, I know what you would be into. It's this thing called sustainable development. And I'm like, what is sustainable development? And he like explained it to me based on like some of the like uni courses that were around on this broad subject. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like what it sums up like what I would like to know more about. So I was like, cool, I'm gonna apply for that at university. So I owe it to my brother for setting me like on the path, and that's when I realized I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do.
So, what was your pathway to get to where you are now?
So yes, I think it's well, I can't not mention the fact that I'm from Romania originally. So from within the European Union at that time, and where I always knew that I wanted to study abroad. So there was, I think, things I needed to do as someone not from the United Kingdom if I wanted to come in and study here. But for me, it was like, yeah, the extracurricular activities and then taking kind of language exams like Cambridge certificates to prove like my level of English was like advanced and then proficient to be able to apply, and then having like a lot of extracurricular activities related to what I was going to study at university. And then for me, the process was then the same, like the UCAS application is like same for everyone here, like selecting like 5 choices of university, etc. And then yeah, choosing sustainable development, got into to study that in terms of like the pathway, and then a university because I work for Woodland Trust, so like the trees and woods bit is all my lecturers at the University of St Andrews to blame for because they were obsessed with, well, some of them were, and it like really kind of rubbed on me, and I started, it's like, yeah, I really want to take this module on managing Scotland's environment, and like it just sounds good, probably will never use it, but here I am now, so it proved very useful because I did like it, and I ended up using it in my kind of real life at work. So I think kind of choosing that university pathway and realizing that that's something that suited me, that I wanted to do, kind of the country that I wanted to study in, and then kind of doing all the steps appropriate to like to get there.
So, what subjects did you choose to study?
So the broad degree was like sustainable development, but the way they did it at St Andrews was actually, it's really interesting because you could choose like other, because they could apply, it's basically a university wide thing, so you could be taking like art history classes and they'll still talk about sustainable development in them, or you could be doing economics, and there will be like elements of like environmental issues, sustainable development in them, but we got, yeah, you could choose for the first 2 years, there was like more flexibility, and then in the last 2 years you have to kind of focus on kind of doing something that was like closer to the core of sustainable development. But initially I did geography, so it was a geography sustainable development pathway for the first 2 years. In the first year I did also social anthropology, which was actually a hard choice to drop because it was so interesting that I could still go sit in lectures, just like not do exams, obviously, because it was just a life-changing subject, pretty much, really interesting, but I couldn't continue with that. And then in my 3rd and 4th year, I really had to kind of narrow down to be closer to what I actually wanted to do in sustainable development. And I think I focused on the managing Scotland's environment, managing natural resources, and I did also like some modules related to management and corporate social responsibility, that kind of thing, to help me figure out if that was a pathway I wanted to go on.
So what does an average day look like in your job?
The average day would be, so I always, although people say like don't check your emails first thing, do like something else, I'm like, okay, I like to make sure that I've kind of checked on my emails for the morning, or respond to anything that I've kind of left from the day before to answer. Of course, I never seem to catch up with emails, it's always the difficulty. And then often like I'll have meetings with colleagues, because this role is very kind of being based in Scotland, but in a UK-wide organization, you always have to make sure that your colleagues know what you're doing, and then external people know what you're doing. So I'm always trying to make sure that where I needed to communicate and being that kind of point of information in the different directions, that I have covered that. So that's pretty much on a daily basis. I try to do that. And then at around 11 o'clock, we get our political monitoring service, which is kind of essential to the public affairs role. And in that, like, we'll check the information that we get in terms of kind of latest headlines from the Scottish Parliament, Scottish government, latest headlines related to like environmental issues from like newspapers, for example. We'll get a program of what's happening in Parliament, in the committees, in government, what publications have been made. So that just kind of brings all the information together. So always have to keep an eye on that. If the Parliament is sitting, we'll check the business bulletin as well, like see what's happening. And there's always in my day writing at least one briefing of some sort, and reading some piece of policy, or responding to a consultation, or doing things like advocacy plans and actions, kind of strategizing, I suppose. That's a big part of the role. Kind of, what is your strategy? What are the tools? What are the tactics to get to that goal, to make those environmental changes? It's obviously not as straightforward as that. It's, you make a plan and you get the win, but we try every day. We try to do that. So and then pre-pandemic, there was a lot more going to conferences, being in Parliament in person, which was always lovely and a privilege. I miss sitting there and having coffee and bumping into people randomly and having really good conversations. And kind of a lot of like events and site visits with people, showing them our sites, particularly with parliamentarians. It's just so valuable to be able to get out and see, right, this is trees and woods on the ground. This is our work. This is what could be improved. This is what we could work on. This is what works. Let's now take this in Parliament and kind of learn from it. So those were actually the fun bits for everyone, being able to get out on site, or meeting in conferences, receptions. And that's kind of, you have to now work a little bit harder at that human social interaction, which is so key to this role, but we're adapting.
I could imagine it must be so hard to try and figure that part of it out.
Yes, well, I think everybody was in the same boat, which actually makes me feel better in a way. And all the other kind of equivalents in other environmental organizations have been really good at sharing and saying, right, this is what we were doing. This is one tactic that could work. Or when they had conversations with kind of, parliamentary researchers, or they said like, oh, you make sure you speak to Arina Woodland Trust, and I'll be like, make sure you speak to such and such, like another NGO. So we are kind of like a close-knit community, so we've made it through, but I can't wait to be able to get out again.
I could imagine. So what would you say has helped you the most in getting to where you are?
Hard work. Hard work, and understanding that the reward for good work is more work. Sometimes that was at least the day I graduated, that's what they told us. So in one of the speeches, I'm like, okay, that's how it's gonna work, I suppose. And yeah, I guess there's also an element of getting your head down, doing your work, doing the best that you you can, and being seen to not necessarily to put into hours, because it's all about the quality of the work, just being seen to understand, to be aligned with the values of the organization that you work for. And I've had a few people along the way that I think about them and I'm like, I've learned so much from you, like as a person. So that always helps, just kind of listening or observing others. And it doesn't always have to be people like higher up, it's just anyone like you can use as a mentor, I suppose. So that's been really, really helpful. And yeah, I think it's also like an element of it is just trying to do more than just your job. So the Woodland Trust, for example, we have opportunities to go plant trees or help out at events or do volunteering. And I'm always like, oh yeah, pick me, I'll go. And just being seen to actually trying to help, take actions, do things, constantly being really involved just helps build your relationships with your colleagues. And I think that's also been something that's helped get me to where I am.
So what would you say has been the hardest thing about getting to where you are?
The hardest thing about getting to where I am, I think it's perhaps it would be knowing that everything happens for a reason, because not everything is successful and amazing all the time, but sometimes things work out a certain way for a certain reason, and that I think accepting that is kind of hard at some point, or in certain situation you just can't see it. But it just in general, I think it's just like it's just you have to put in the work, and sometimes it's not 9 to 5, and sometimes it's frustrating, you don't know where to go, who to ask, and that's difficult. And I guess if I'm gonna take myself back like a few years ago when I applied, I just looked at before this, I looked at like the list of jobs that I applied, because I used to keep like track of the jobs I had applied for, and like getting my foot in the door, that was the hardest for sure. Just getting that first entry-level job, it was really, really difficult. I feel like once I got that, like you get like a year or two under your belt, like you're in a much better position, because everybody's like, oh, we want like someone with experience. I'm like, well, we're all out of university, we're gonna get experience. But if someone kind of gives you the chance, then you're very, very grateful for being given a chance at the beginning to get my foot in the door. But yeah, I've applied for 20 jobs before I got my first one. And I knew people who applied for 60 and still didn't get anything. But yeah, you only need not one job. That's what I used to tell myself, and everybody else that was in the same boat. But you just kind of keep applying. But that was I think getting my foot in the door, getting my first job was the hardest.
I didn't realize it would actually be that hard. And I mean, I do know how hard it is, because they want experience, but you need the experience to get the experience. But I didn't think it would be that tough.
Disillusion you, Skylar. So I'm not trying to do it. I'm just being realistic that it's gonna just, well, you might just get the first job that you apply for, and that is amazing. But also, be prepared to apply for 5, 10.
Yeah, you don't get it straight away.
And don't be like, it's normal. We've all been through it. Like, don't think like it's just you that's applied for many jobs, and you don't give up. Because like you could be like your 5th job when they don't even get back to you to tell you you've been unsuccessful. That's also like sometimes I'm like, can you just like not an automatic email will do, please? So sometimes you don't even get that, and it's kind of like, but no, keep going, you will get something. You just have to keep applying, even if it's like I said, for me it was 20, for other people it was more than that, but eventually you get there.
Yeah, you get there in the end. So does your organization have any opportunities for young people, such as volunteering or?
We've got lots of like volunteering opportunities. So it's from tree planting, or being like volunteer speakers, or volunteering on our sites. For example, there's volunteering on like citizen science projects. So one of them is to monitor ancient woodlands or ancient trees that are under threat and from like planning developments. There is one called Observatory, where you get trained. I think that's kind of like the most complex one. Like you learn a lot about tree disease, like tree pests and diseases, and you actually are trained to observe these. So for example, like ash dieback, that's affecting ash trees, and helping map that using the observatory system. So you record your data onto a system. That's pretty cool and complex. I haven't volunteered for that myself, so I'm not like 100% how it works. I know there's like training and like investment in that, so you actually build some really good skills. There's an ancient tree inventory, and that everyone can do. Like you can become like a volunteer verifier. Like people can record trees on it, and then a volunteer, kind of like dedicated trained volunteer, verifies the trees. If they're ancient veterans, they might go on site to look at the tree as well and kind of verify the record that was sent by the member of the public. And we have one called Nature's Calendar as well. So people send us records of kind of our bluebells like too early. So I think last year we had like bluebells in January in like kind of the north of Scotland, and that was unusual. So you're just like mapping what nature is doing and creating a long-term database of like the trends of how the weather is affecting nature. There's like, so almost each of our sites has a volunteering, like a bespoke volunteering opportunity for that, or we'll do like rhododendron clearance. There's always like advertisements for tree planting events when the season comes. Yeah, it's kind of internship opportunities. I hope more like good, well-paid ones will be coming up. I don't really know for sure, but it would be nice if we offer that. In the meantime, unpaid volunteering is a good place to start too.
No, those opportunities sound like really interesting. I was like sitting there like, wow, I was hooked.
Well, I'll send you the links afterwards. You can.
Yeah, please, actually.
Oh, and we also have like campaigning volunteers, actually, like the ones that kind of, when we have like campaigns that we do as the trust, so for example, like campaigns to change policies or legislation, they'll help share those as well on their own social media. And it's like, obviously with everything that we do, with everything, there is like training that you get. All of it's more fun in person, but yeah.
Wow. So what would you say to young people who are interested in this field?
Figure out which, like, kind of what path it, because ecology, like, it's a lot, or like environmental issues, it's a lot of things that you want to do. Maybe there's a niche that you want to go into, like rivers or like woods or like wildlife, or like I said, like ecology, etc. So kind of like forestry, again, like there are amazing careers in that sector, and skills shortages in that area is there's always a need for skilled people in that sector, whether it's like in the actual like operations side, or if it's like policy people like me.
So what would you say to your younger self then?
My advice to myself would be that everything happens for a reason. And I have reason to say this, but yeah, like applying to 20 jobs, I'm like, oh, if I'm ever gonna get a job, or should I just go do something else? But no, everything happens for a reason. And actually, another good piece, very practical piece of advice, is to read your application and your CV, like print them out if you can, or get someone else to look over them to make sure that like all your capitals are there, or your commas, because people will look at that. If you apply for a role and you're like, I've got attention to detail, I'm like, well, you kind of missed like 5 full stops. You're not really demonstrating that. So just make sure that you like read everything, and everything is like, and try to tailor your applications as much as you can. I get sometimes applications and it's like for a different, like you can tell they just copy pasted. I'm like, you just wasted yourself a chance. Because
That's really good advice.
it's obvious, but it's worth stating.
Yeah. Thank you for answering those questions. That was really interesting.
Well, thank you so much, Skylar, and I hope this is useful for you or anyone looking to work, well, environmental sector or beyond.